Yeah, I'll just go with.
Yeah?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Julio, and I'm here to talk to you today about my thesis project, which is called Emote. And so what Emote... so what Emote is, it's a project that the focus is helping me become more attentive to my emotions. And Emote actually is a project that came together at the end of last semester, halfway through last semester, when I was doing two things. I was taking a class here at ITP called Wristband, which focuses on how to use technology to look inside at parts of yourself that are, not readily reviewed to your consciousness. So at the same time that I was doing that, I was reading some books by Jungian psychologists and Buddhist monks. One of them is this book here. Another one is a book by this guy called Alan Wallace called The Attention Revolution. And through all of these different inputs, I was also having a tough time personally, going through an emotionally tough time. So I decided to why not take technology and try to take some of these practices from these books and try to integrate them into my life. And the way I wanted to do that is leverage technology to help me integrate these different practices into my life. There were a couple of different things that I wanted to get out of this. One, I wanted to become more aware of the emotional processes that were happening inside me. This included both processes such as things going on in my mind as well as things going on in my body. I also wanted to be able to identify the triggers and scripts that tended to instigate my emotions, and I wanted to be able to differentiate or distinguish between what are constructive emotions versus what are harmful emotions. Lastly, of course, I wanted to, within these practices, nurture constructive emotions. So how did I do this? Really quick note on the components that make up Emote. There's an emotion journal. There's an activity log. There's a biosensing wristband, which is what I'm wearing here. There's a database where the data from all these different elements gets put together. And then there's a visualization application. So we all know that when we become emotional, it's not something just in our mind. It's something in our bodies. And when we get angry, we get flushed, we start sweating, our body gets hot. So by being tuned into these different things that can happen in your body can also help you recognize when you're being emotional, when you're in an emotional state. And so one of the things that Emote does is this wristband is able to sense my level of sweat, which is called galvanic skin response, as well as my heart rate, and it's able to make that information available to cell phones or computers via Bluetooth. And the reason why I did this is, again, when I started this project, I was having some relationship difficulties and some other personal issues dealing with. And I was reading a few books, talking to some experts. And one of the things that came back over and over again is how by tracking heart rate and things like GSR, if you use that when you're going into a stressful situation like a potential argument with your spouse, that this is a really good way for you to monitor one another and make sure that if your conversation is getting to a point where somebody's getting very emotional, where it's probably not going to help out in terms of what you're trying to get at, then this was kind of a recommendation that they had in the book, and which inspired me to do this. I will say I have not been able to test it in those conditions yet, which is a good thing, not complaining about it. So I'm actually going to use this right now. So as you can see, throughout this presentation, you're going to see my heart rate and my GSR on the screen, and you'll see sometimes the heart rate may jump up a little bit of the GSR. That's issues with the sensors. They're not always 100% right. So if you see my heart rate go down below 40, I'm not dying. I'm okay. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit now about emotional awareness. This is one of the other areas where Emote helps. And the way that Emote helps me become aware of my emotions, one important thing to notice, I think we all have been in this situation where we become emotional, we don't even realize that we're emotional. Somebody else will tell us, or we'll actually only figure out after the fact, we're like, what did I do? Why did I do that? And so Emote helps me avoid that type of thing. By doing two things. One, a core part of Emote is me keeping this emotion journal, which I put entries into it about 10 times a day. That process of consistently thinking about how I'm feeling, and not just thinking, oh, I'm feeling this way, but also trying to think a little bit about what is the source of that, and what are certain things that are happening in life at this moment, as in this last hour or this last could be relating to this. That helps me not only become aware of how I'm feeling, but also help me become aware of certain things in the background behind that may be leading to that feeling. One other thing that has been really interesting is by focusing on how I'm feeling so often, it's become very clear to me, differences between, what is a painful or pleasurable emotion versus what's a harmful and constructive emotion. We often talk about positive, negative emotions, talking about positive meaning pleasurable, negative meaning painful, when I think it would be much more productive talking about positive being constructive and harmful being negative, because I can be very angry at an injustice and take action because of that motivation, and then you could say that that emotion is painful but positive. Whereas if I'm having a moment of road rage, that may be painful as well, but it's harmful and it's not constructive. So this is an area again where this kind of constant thinking has helped me a lot. One other area that Emote helps is really understanding emotional triggers and scripts. Our emotional triggers are pretty much those learned reflexes that we have, some of which are reflexes that are genetic, some of which are not. There's a discussion out there about what is what, but the ultimate thing is those are those unlearned, unconscious triggers that make you get emotional. And a lot of these triggers are outside of our knowledge, partially because we don't think about emotions that much, but partially that's one of the benefits of emotions. You don't have to think about things, you just act. And that's the benefit, that's the intelligence also that it does provide. But when your emotions are not based on a good understanding of reality, that becomes an issue. And the scripts, which are things that, the stories we create about our lives that usually we start creating very early, are often where these emotion triggers are embedded. And, we've all, I think, had experiences where something that made sense to react in a certain way at a certain point of our lives, we react the same way to that 10 years later when you're no longer a kid, you're an adult. And this constant tracking, has helped me think a lot about those things. And the last area, which Emote really aims to help my practice, is helping me to track the practice as it goes along. Because part of this practice, things that I've been doing is having a meditation session, doing sessions of yoga on a frequent basis, making sure that I connect with friends on a regular basis, as well as listening to music. These are kind of the four main things that I've been putting in this practice along with some other things. And with Emote, with the activity log, I track when these things happen and for how long they happen and so on and so forth, so that I can make sure that I'm keeping these things that I know are important to me alive inside of my life. I'm not the first guy to start tracking stuff. As a matter of fact, there's a bunch of nerds out there like me. The self-quantified meetup group happens all over the country as well as around the world. They had their first conference this year. There's all these products that have been coming out to track all types of things about your lifestyle, about your fitness, about your sleep. And there's also, just hundreds and hundreds of applications out there available now for your mobile devices that are made to track, again, everything from your fitness to your pregnancy and so on. Now what I want to do is talk a little bit more about each of the components of Emote, because Emote is rather of an ad hoc system that I've created to support these practices. So some of these systems kind of work independently before I kind of integrate it all into that database at the end. The first thing I want to talk about is the emotion journal. The way the emotion journal works right now, it's really just a blog that I've set up. It's a private blog because I do post things there that are very personal, and I don't want just anybody to be able to go there and see it. But I posted it on the blog via email, and I found that this was the approach to go after a lot of thinking about how to best capture this data. As you can see here, I tested a bunch of different applications for my mobile phone, logging applications. Some of them are even good, like Moody Me and Mappiness were pretty interesting, but none of them gave me the flexibility I needed to be able to test different methodologies of collecting data, or they didn't give me access to the data, which was, of course, a huge issue. And that's why I ended up going with email. I am having some issues with email now as I've continued to evolve my methodology, but it was definitely a good place for me to start that would allow me to kind of have that play. The next element that makes part of Emote is the activity log. The reason why I created the activity log, it wasn't part of Emote to begin with, was because I found I really wanted to be able to drill down into more specific information about those things that I wanted to do in my life, like yoga, like listening to music. The emotion journal didn't allow me to get that information granularly enough. I wanted to know that, these specific days I did a meditation session, and it was from this time in the morning until that time in the morning. So specific durations and that type of thing. And so I tested a bunch of different applications for this. I'm using an iPhone application called TimeJot that lets me export the data really easily in a format that I can put into the database. So it was just, a perfect solution for the needs that I had. Next up, there's the heart rate and GSR sensor wristband that talks to your phone. And the color on this will actually, if somebody really scares me, it will turn red. It's a sign that I've become aroused. A little bit about prototyping for this stuff. So the sensor that I'm using right now to capture GSR, my sweat level, is right now it's actually 2 pieces of silver that are attached to these 2 wires, and this is the best I've been able to get so far. I've tried fabric, I've tried electrodes, I've tried, actually one of these is my wedding band, which my wife was actually supportive about that, which was unexpected. But the point that I'm getting at is that there isn't really a good GSR sensor for you to wear on the go. There is a good heart rate sensor, but so I had to do a lot of testing. At the end, I found this, which is okay, not ideal yet. Definitely want to continue working to get this a little more sturdy. In terms of the logger itself, I've done a bunch of prototypes. These are the 3 cleanest prototypes that I've done, including the latest one, and that one was actually named Moody Julia when I was doing this project last semester. And so this is a process that's really been just trying to get this as small as possible, as wearable as possible. Still not as wearable as I'd like it to be, but it's a lot better now. The last prototype did not have Bluetooth to communicate to my computer or to a cell phone, so that's a core feature that I want in the future, so I can be able to access that data real time when I'm on the go and not just after I come home. Now let's talk a little bit about the database. The database, what it does is pretty much take the data from these 3 different data sources, integrates it together, and it just processes it a little bit, cleans up, tries to do some cleanup to the data, doesn't save any data that, sometimes the heart rate sensor's not working, so it eliminates all that kind of garbage. And of course, it prepares the data for being used in the visualization app, which is what I'll talk about now. So the visualization app at this point is a very ad hoc thing. There isn't like a real visualization app that I can just pop in the data and then it magically gives me these visualizations. It's really, I spend most of the time getting the data methodology set up, getting the data into the database, and I've only in the last couple of weeks started playing around with visualizations. So here are just some interesting tidbits about the work so far. So I've been now doing this work for 96 days. I've been capturing my heart rate and GSR for 65 days. I have, as you can tell, thousands of hours worth or data about thousands of hours of my life, almost a year. I mean, not really, it's 1,600 hours. Oh no, that's a year of working, sorry. Thinking through my own. In terms of positive versus negative, I've got 73% of the time I'm feeling positive, the rest I'm feeling negative. It's pretty small, I think overall I'm a pretty happy guy. This visualization here just goes to show you, this is kind of, how I look at stuff sometimes for a specific day. One of the circles is for the AM, the other one is for the PM. The color yellow means happy, blue means blue, sad. The red is the heart rate. And the farthest it goes, the higher my heart rate was at that moment. You can usually see at yoga, like you see those spikes there at the, and you can mouse through any of it and see, like information. This is a week level. This was average data. That's why when it tells you information, it's giving you emotions included so many different emotions because it was the average for Wednesdays in general. If I pull this for a specific day, it will give me the specific post that I had looked at that time. So the last little visualization I'll show you is just a little bit about how I feel about school. So there was a 67 hours worth of posts related to school. Out of that time, 65% I was happy, which is lower than my overall happiness in life. So even though I thought I was pretty happy here at ITP, my most common emotions are stressed, followed by satisfaction. Luckily, satisfaction, which is a positive emotion, is more common. And then at the bottom here, this is a chart that just shows my stress, throughout the last, since the beginning of March. Midterms, as you can see now here, towards finals and thesis, it's gone up a lot. You don't see the last couple of days, otherwise I'd probably go even higher, because that only goes to the 1st of May. Okay, so now an assessment quickly. How did I think it went, looking back at the 4 objectives that I had? Overall, I think things went pretty well. I mean, I've definitely made progress in all these areas. That's not to say that this project, everything I've done is successful. In a minute, we'll talk about some areas where I feel I still need work. But I definitely can say that I've made progress in all of these 4 areas. I'm definitely more aware of my emotions. I'm able to identify triggers and distinguish better constructive from harmful patterns. I think the key, though, is from the last point, is that what's been helping me do all this is a practice. It's not the technology. And the technology is only helping it so much as it's partnering and helping me with that practice. Which now, in terms of the areas where I really need to continue working, I I need to really continue working the visualizations to try to get insights from that, insights that are not things that I already know. So far, I've been looking at the data. It tells me something that I already know, and it just confirms it, which is great, but that's not, I'd love to be able to continue playing around with that. Want to continue playing around with real-time physiology monitoring because I really just started that, and so that's an area where I need to really test this out and see how it works and if it really is useful for the kind of situations that I think it would be useful in. And I do want to make the process for data collection, which has been email, which has been fine so far, I want to make that easier because now that I'm happy with the overall methodology, I want to facilitate and reduce the amount of time I spend on each of those elements. From a technical assessment, this was a great project. I learned a lot, from learning how to use MySQL database. I mean, to becoming a Bluetooth expert. I would almost call myself now after suffering for a couple of days, not getting it to work, and then just a bunch of other stuff too. So in terms of the future, like where do I want this project to go? Because I see my practice in this area continuing, and I definitely want to continue to use technology tools to help this practice. The first thing is doing a mobile app that integrates the journal, the log, and the wristband data all together and lets me do what I want to do with the journal entries, which is make them shorter, sweeter, but still capturing the same core information. I want to continue to explore visualizations, as I said, and I want to look at partnerships as well, even with psychologists or data analysts as well. I think that might be, I have so much data now that I think it would be great to share it with other people who I can trust and who have similar interests. And then, Nirvana or Techno Hell, I don't know which one I'm going to, but probably one of the two. And thank you very much to everyone here at ITP.